All right, good morning, everyone. It is now 10 o'clock and a little past, and welcome to the August 12th, 2021 meeting of the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. I'm Alex Wan, I'm chair of the board. I'm joined by my colleagues to my far left, Madam Vice Chair, Dr. Kathleen Ruth, to my immediate left, Ms. Terry Crawford, and to my right, Mr. Aaron Johnson. With that, we constitute a quorum, and the meeting is now officially called to order. Before I continue, I just want to acknowledge we are joined by our director, Richard Barron, our board secretary, Mariska Bodison, and Ms. Cheryl Ringer and David Lohman from the Fulton County Law Department. With that, I just want to remind everybody that cell phones should be turned off in the audience. And we have a friend flying around here. And then, all right, first item on the agenda is the actual approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve it, or are there any changes that need to be made by my colleagues? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Crawford. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson. If there's no further discussion, let's take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The agenda has been approved. Next item is communications and public response. I'll remind everybody that you should have signed up a card earlier to speak today. There is a 2-minute time limit. Ms. Bodison will signal me as your time is coming to a close, so I'll signal you to wrap your comments if you have not completed them by then. Okay, first speaker is Dr. Janice Johnston. Dr. Johnston, if you will come to the microphone and share with us your thoughts, please. There's a little button that on the microphone itself.
Can you hear me? Great. So, thank you for allowing me to speak. On July 13th, petitioners that have filed suit against Fulton County Election Office added stunning claims of massive errors and provable fraud in the hand count audit of November 3rd, 2020 election. The team alleges to have found falsified tally sheets and a stunning 60% error reporting rate. Does Mr. Rick Barron have a report of who falsified these tally sheets? Has this Fulton County or Happy Face employee been investigated and held accountable? Why can't Mr. Barron hire Fulton County residents as poll workers? Why does he use Happy Face's temp agency as a workaround to avoid doing the work of hiring, to avoid fair labor standards, to avoid providing benefits where appropriate, and to avoid anti-nepotism policies? A list of over 150 Fulton residents was provided to his office, and to my knowledge, not one has been hired. He's known about the public's dissatisfaction with Happy Faces for 9 months and has failed to act. He delays the election board every month and then claims it is too late to make a change. Please do something about this lack of performance. Most importantly, it's not acceptable to have professional partisan activists working for Fulton County elections during any part of elections, in the warehouse, in L&A, in the ballot processing area, or in the tabulation center. That means the elections group, Vote at Home, Democracy Fund, New Georgia Project, Georgia Coalition for the Peoples, et cetera, et cetera. Additionally, no fund should be provided to poll workers unless it is provided to all polling places in the county by the elections office. Food is a gift, and gifts influence behavior. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Johnston. Next speaker is Ms. Anna Tillman. Ms. Tillman, if you'll come up to the podium, please, and share with us your remarks.
Hello, is it okay to take my mask down? Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, good morning. So I just have a few questions for you. Let's see, get this organized here. Is Fulton County Election Office charging exorbitant amounts to municipalities to conduct upcoming November elections. In the past, refunds were made to cities for this cost for low turnout elections. Are there plans to do this again for this upcoming election, and does the IGA contract reflect this? Second question is, why does Mr. Barron want $300,000 for poll pads and incidentals? And does that mean there's missing equipment? And if so, where is it? And let's see. Third question, what has the board done about the voter GA claim of falsified tally sheets? So that's been public information for a while, and we just want to know if you've done anything about it and if you're going to investigate that. Next question, is $300,000 really needed for truck rentals for a low turnout municipal election? And that's all I have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tillman. Next speaker is John Nance. Mr. Nance.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, my name is John Nance, and I'm from Sandy Springs. And my question is whether it's possible that the Board of Registration and Elections could allow Zoom comments like the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. Commissioners' meetings provides for Zoom commentary, and since Fulton County spans 70 miles from end to end, it would give equal access to all Fulton citizens to provide comments through Zoom rather than have to attend in person. For citizens living at the ends of the county, it involves taking half a day of work and paying approximately at least $12 for parking as well. It would be great if we afforded equal access to all citizens within the Fulton County public to give comment. Everyone has the right to be heard, and I think Zoom commentary will help us ensure that that happens. So in addition to that request, I would also like to request that the board reduce the county requirement for temporary agencies to perform election work. The board should do everything it can to train local volunteers to handle these tasks to avoid having conflicts of interest with temporary agencies. And that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nance. Our final speaker this morning will be Nia Corsten.
Good morning. Hello, I am here today to give public comment for Bridget Thorne, since during the last meeting, you seemed to have a technical difficulty during her public comments, and they were inaudible. You are authorizing a $7.7 million contract for Happy Faces Temp Agency to basically run our elections. You are using this company despite fact number one, Stacey Abrams has financial ties to Happy Faces. Evidence from a Secretary of State UCC search was presented. Anyone who states otherwise is spreading misinformation. Happy Faces owner Michael Hairston should appear before the board to defend his company. Fact number two, there is evidence that Happy Faces employs double-scanned ballots on video and released ballot images. There are tally sheets that were incorrectly filled out 100% for Biden. Who filled these out? Unredact those names. Fact number three, the Secretary of State auditor said Fulton elections should not rely on temp agencies. They are untrained, sloppy, and don't care. His report showed glaring incompetence. Mr. Johnson, in your last meeting, you encouraged Barron to write the mayor letters and pressure them to support the Happy Faces contract, or that Fulton County will not be able to staff your elections. Mr. Barron sent out an interoffice memo stating that misinformation is being spread about Happy Faces. What misinformation? Mr. Barron actually sent the commissioners a fact-checked USA Today article link. Yes, Stacey Abrams does not part own Happy Faces. She part owns Now account. Barron sent a quote from the owner, Michael Hairston, that he doesn't know about the UCC filing with his own company. Someone went through a lot of trouble to file Now account as a primary lender. With all these facts, why are you fighting so hard for a little company that isn't in Fulton County? Why are you fighting so hard for a technical non-temp agency that will be running a complex technical voting system? And now you have this internal audit report that came in Not only are elections run poorly, this glaring report shows that our tax dollars are not being used in an effective and efficient manner.
Ms. Corson,
I
I'm gonna-
encourage you to fire Richard Barron a second time. If not, the state needs to take over the handling of our elections.
Ms. Corson, thank you. Your time is
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our public communications and public response. The next item on the agenda under old business is approval of minutes. Colleagues, you received the July 8th, 2021 regular meeting minutes in the board packet that was provided, and then also the executive session meeting that was held that same day. The minutes were provided yesterday as well. Anybody have any comments, questions, edits, or changes to the documents as presented? If not, is there a motion to approve, hopefully, maybe together, if there's no objection? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes from July 8th? All right, motion from Ms. Crawford. Is there a second? Oh, sorry, Dr. Ruth. Okay. We need to do this where we're not like. All right, seconded by Ms. Crawford. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Next item up is monthly operations report for July 2021. Mr. Barron.
Good morning, Board. We on the agenda today, there will be two location changes that are going to decrease the number of sites we have from 261 to 259 for the fall election. We have advised all of the advanced voting locations regarding the November 2nd election. The staff is currently revising training material to include all the Senate Bill 202 procedural changes to include advanced voting duties regarding the absentee ballot drop boxes. We are compiling information from Secretary of State. We continue to get it to ensure that advanced voting manager training will include SB 202 absentee ballot drop box procedures. Right now, also for poll worker recruitment and training, the class curriculums are being revised, and Train the Trainer begins next week. We're working with the communications department to rebrand all advanced voting and election day training materials and presentations to include training videos regarding form completion. And the SOS approved usage of the no-ink electronic fee schedule to expedite poll worker payroll. And these procedures will be included in the poll worker training. We will be doing logic and accuracy testing at the Election Preparation Center. Staff is currently drafting procedures regarding chain of custody for all that equipment and the documents and COVID-19 protection guidelines. We have purchased the WDS inventory system, and in-person and virtual training is being conducted by the voters. We are also going to be rewrapping the mobile voting buses so that they will be used specifically for voter education, as well as election day emergency use if approved, or if we can also loan those to other county departments upon request. Our areas of focus through the remainder of this year are several. We're focusing right now on absentee ballots, ensuring that the ballot requests are processed with accuracy in a timely manner. We've worked with the USDR, United States Digital Response, to create a portal for Fulton County. We did that last year, and we've made some more modifications to that so that all absentee ballot requests, Secretary of State's portal is not available for the election this fall, so our portal will be activated as of midnight on the 16th, when we can start accepting applications, and ours will allow for people to apply for ballot by mail online. Also, if we receive applications either by email or through the mail, those will be routed all through into OneDrive, so they'll all be processed from the same dashboard. We've also purchased Quadient software to allow us to send our Bluecrest machine in batches. Previously, that was a much more difficult process with the new voting system. We had to select them one at a time. And this is more in line with our old system that we used prior to Dominion's voting system. Working with the County Manager's Office, Finance and Human Resources, we have now an absentee ballot division in our department. Deputy Director Patrick Eskridge will oversee that. We have posted the absentee manager, absentee supervisor, and absentee officer positions. Those are 6 positions. We will be evaluating candidates and interviewing them soon in this month. The WDS inventory system, we've already purchased that, includes an absentee voting module. The system will be implemented over the next probably 8 months. We hope to use it in the check-in centers in November, and we are also going to be labeling, or we're putting barcode labels on everything to get those in, prepare to get those into the system. Blue Crest is going to update all the security features in the software this month. And then we'll be able to also run a mock election the first week of September, and we'll do another one later in September as well, ahead of the October 12th mailing for the absentee ballots. We will also, I just stated about the interviews that we're going to be conducting. Also, we have completed a contracting process for business process review, and that is slated for Board of Commissioners approval on August 18th. And the consultants will work with Mr. Eskridge to develop documenting best practice standard operating procedures for all absentee ballot procedures going forward. We will continue to shift away from our reliance on supplemental staff to conduct our elections. When I arrived here in 2013, we had a full-time staff of 18. That was a decrease from 2009. There were 24 full-time staff in the department. Since 2013, we are now up to 37 full-time staff, or actually with the 9 new positions that were added, we are going to be up to 46 full-time staff from the 18 that we had in 2013. We added 13 ahead of the 2020 election cycle, and we will be putting in our budget request for 2022 another 12 positions to try to get our full-time staff up to 58. And we're working with the county manager's office to develop, and human resources to determine how we are going to staff the department going forward, whether it's going to be a hybrid model with a staffing agency or whether we're going to route everything through human resources. There's a significant cost difference between routing it, having human resources hire everyone, and it will also require that some of the other departments that support the hiring, for example, finance or human resources, they'll have to add staff as well to process all of those people. Currently, our staffing agency does provide benefits to its staff. I'm not sure the full extent of those benefits, but those are available through the current staffing agency. We also hired a deputy director, Mr. Eskridge, who started in June of 2021, and we will be, I guess I covered everything on that area of focus for contingency planning. We have been communicating with our staffing partner regarding excess recruitment in case of staffing shortage due to COVID or other factors this fall. Of course, we had 26 people go down with COVID last October. And so we're trying to make sure that with all of the HEPA filters and the circulation in the air out at EPC where it happened last year, that doesn't happen again this year. We're going to try to practice social distancing as much as possible out there. We are working, the Board of Commissioners will also be considering a lease on August 18th for us to do Election Central. A site has been identified and chosen, and that would mean that the entire department, all of the warehouse mail room, training, a meeting room for us, as well as all of our operations would all move into that one facility, making it much easier to manage. And that should be on the August 18th recess agenda for the commissioners as well. We plan to have Easy Vote in place for processing voters during early voting, should ENET have any performance issues as it did during early voting in October 2020. We have found that having Easy Vote as not only a backup, but it works alongside ElectionNet. That means that we have a way around if the state system is not performing well or if it goes down. We have a staffing agency that will provide technical staff if needed for election day techs or system specialists for duties such as logic and accuracy testing. If we need more people in case of COVID, we do need to ready the mobile units for election day should the governor declare a state of emergency. So we will have those two available on election day, both of our mobile voting units, if it's necessary. We're creating standard operating procedures surrounding the contingency plans. The RFP that I spoke of earlier will also, the consultants that will come in will help us either update, edit, or develop standard operating procedures throughout the department. For voter education, we've completed an elections communication plan. We've posted voter education and outreach manager position. That's one of the other new positions. We are reviewing candidates to interview for that. The early voting flyer is complete. We are scheduling events for this summer and fall. Right now, there are 5 voter education events that are scheduled. There is also a VEO partnership committee that is still being formed, and we expect this nonpartisan volunteer committee to be very beneficial in our outreach efforts. And right now, they're currently we're outlining a list of expectations for this group. Additional stakeholders and community leaders have been contacted. Currently, there are 11 individuals that have been identified on this list. And so that's where we are with the voter education plan. And post-election assessment, we complete that each week, and you guys are able to go into Achieve It to check on those items. We are working right now on Poll Worker University quick reference guide. That's in development. Standard Senate Bill 202 quick reference flyer for voters and candidates. Polling place changes and early voting sites posted to the web. We also have a myths versus facts website page under development working with external affairs. Standard operating procedures are currently being updated, edited, and developed, and public events may be switched to virtual events depending on how the pandemic plays out in the fall. And we are also exploring Zoom options for voter education events in the fall. With regard to the registration division, we have received 55,883 applications this year. We've received 88,174 voter applications in July. So far this year, of the 55,883, 17,820 of those are new applications. We've mailed 72 letters to voters who are suspected felons. On July 28th, 11,770 voters were removed for no contact through 2 general elections. Those were removed from our voter rolls. We also mailed out 32,460 letters on the no contact list maintenance. Those notices were sent to voters who had not had any type of contact with election offices in at least 5 calendar years. And then they have a time period in which they respond before they get moved to the inactive list. And that is it for the operations report, and the staff and I can take any questions.
All right, questions from my colleagues, and before we do that, I want to acknowledge that we've been joined in the audience by Fulton Board of Commission Chair Rob Pitts. All right, any questions or comments from colleagues? Ms. Crawford, then Dr. Ruth. Is your microphone on?
Hi, I'm sorry. On the startup date for the absentee ballots, that's September 16th, midnight?
We can begin to accept applications, yes, on August 16th.
August 16th. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that link will go live at midnight, August 16th.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Dr. Ruth?
Yes, thank you for your report, Rick. I have a couple of questions about the poll worker training. So how many trainers will there be?
I'm going to have Nadine
Okay.
address that.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. Good morning. We are currently hiring 10 to 13 trainers. We have 2 election officers, but they're recruiting 10 to 13 trainers at this time.
Okay, and training will start Monday?
Training
the
for,
trainer?
I'm sorry?
Train the trainer starts Monday?
No, poll staff will be, actual election staff will be trained on Monday, so we can all review the training material to ensure that everyone is on the same page and all the SB 202 guidelines have been implemented in training. Then trainer will take place on the 17th, I believe, which is Wednesday. Is that Wednesday? Yeah, I believe. It'll take place the next day, but we will be going over training on Monday with the staff and the trainers and the election officers, and then trainers after that.
Okay, great. And we all know how important the poll worker training is. And my comment is just that efforts need to really focus on high-quality, standardized training so that everyone is trained the exact same way and information is conveyed in the same manner. So, and I would also recommend, I know that Xavier and Johnny are leading this effort, that after trainers are trained, that either one of them are in the room during the training to make sure that training is done with fidelity.
Yes, we will be, they will be monitoring all the trainers to make sure they're all on the same page. Basically, they're giving them all the same guidelines and the PowerPoint presentations to make sure everyone is consistent. At the same time, they're also gonna be making videos of form training, so if managers need to refresh on any forms, they'll be able to log into that and look at the video to go over forms as well.
Great, that's excellent. And is it possible to have the materials uploaded to Achieve It so that we, as the board, can access those materials?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, and then I had a couple of questions around staffing. So Rick, there's 6 new positions that are being advertised?
We actually had 9.
Okay.
Some of them I was going to address. We've got an IT manager, we've got a financial systems manager, voter education and outreach manager, 4 absentee officers, an absentee manager, and an absentee supervisor.
Okay, and Mr. Eskridge is heading up absentee ballots, right?
Correct.
And how many staff will be part of that team?
There are 6 full-time staff for the absentee division, the absentee manager, absentee supervisor, and 4 absentee officers.
And will the process and procedures for the absentee ballot, so I know in the past we have had a flow chart that the communications team developed that showed voters how to request an absentee ballot. I think it's also important to create some type of flow chart or mapping that enables voters to see what happens to their absentee ballot once it's received by the department.
Yes, and we have a map of that is prepared, but we can, I think we're going to alter some of the procedures on that, but we'll provide that next month.
And lastly, do you feel like with the staffing that you will be adequately staffed by October? You have 9 positions that are vacant.
The 9 new positions, are we going to be able to hire for all of those?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, they've already been posted. We already have the registries for those, so we're already reviewing the candidates.
Okay.
And we are reposting one of the positions, the absentee supervisor position, but that one, all of the remaining ones, we're already selecting candidates to interview for all of those positions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be all over the place. A couple questions. So we do have a plan for thinking beyond our current process for like happy faces. We're looking at something that's broader. It's just a matter of doing something like that takes time, and it's not something that's going to happen by our next board meeting, correct?
Yes, and I'm going to be meeting with county manager staff on Monday, and then in our regular Tuesday meeting, I think we're going to make some decisions about how to go forward with that, whether it's going to be a hybrid model between staffing agency and HR, whether it'll be all HR, or whether it would be all staffing agency.
Okay.
Because some of the other departments that are going to be involved have to put in budget requests for increasing the staff to be able to administratively handle another 300 to 400 people that we would be bringing in that normally the staffing agency would process.
Okay. As it relates to the mobile voting units, will people be able to do a request, like while the mobile voting units are out doing voter education? Let's say somebody is there and they want to request their application while they're there. Is that possible, or will that be possible?
Yeah, we will have, voter education events. We will have voter registration applications as well as absentee ballot applications.
And they can just take their license and go through the actual process, but do it right then?
They would be able to fill it out, yes, and we can have a box there to have them turn those in.
Okay. And speaking of the mobile voting units, during early voting, if there is an issue, I don't know if we're precluded or not, but if there is an issue at an early voting facility or location that for some reason they're unable to vote, power's out or something like that, would that fall under emergency, or is it only natural disaster?
That's prohibited now. Only the
prohibited.
governor has to declare a state of emergency in order for us to use those now. Even if, like last year, we had a couple schools get Legionnaire's disease, and we were able to just move the buses there. And after the hurricane, one of the election day sites on another election was affected by that, and we were able to just move the bus to that location as well, but we don't have that flexibility anymore. And we did actually move those buses during early voting to alleviate, I think one of the sites was out of power for a couple of days, so we moved the buses out in front of Chastain Park. But yeah, we're prohibited from doing that anymore.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. And as it relates to our website, it seems as though a lot of information on our website still reflects back to previous elections. Do you know how soon, and I don't know if I need to wait to ask that question later, but do you know how soon our website will be updated because the app seems to be pretty much updated with the current information. I noticed that we had the 8 drop boxes on there. We had what days, early voting times, et cetera. But the website is not reflecting the same information as the app.
We're working with Jessica's team, and we're updating some of the graphics on all of the forms. Once that is complete, which I think, like the early voting flyer is complete now, so those types of things should start going up onto the website. And I know that, I think probably within the next week, you should start to see all the updates on our site.
And I'm asking a couple of candidates who are qualifying and getting ready right now. They're starting to go to the website for information, and they're calling saying this is not, different things. Next, you mentioned, and I want to make sure I heard this correctly, the Secretary of State's portal for absentee ballot requests will not be working this year.
Right, it is not available for counties that are conducting municipal elections in the fall.
Okay, okay, so we'll be able to have ours.
But our site, our portal is active. It's been tested, the link works, and so we're just waiting until midnight on the 16th to put that on the site.
So one of the issues that we had last year is was when people were taking, it seemed to be when they had an iPhone and they were taking live shots as opposed to regular shots. It did that, it does that little quick video and they would send that in. Is that still going to be an issue, or are we able to figure out a way to mitigate that?
Yeah, we've been able to, through the portal, it tells you exactly how to submit that. And also when you submit something through the email, it goes straight into this OneDrive. So everything will be on the dashboard. If we have an issue on that dashboard with any of the applications, we can ask them to resubmit a picture if necessary. But it's basically, they're listed now in a dashboard form so everything that comes in through email is funneled in. If we receive it through the mail, it's scanned and then funneled, so everything goes into the same place.
Now, I don't know if this is necessary, but it's just something to think about for whoever is working on the technical aspect. But we might need to put a note just for iPhone users, because the people that I heard from that were having we were having part of the issues, and I could be wrong, but just an idea, were people who generally take live shots.
Right.
Because in their minds, they're not taking video shots, but kind of technically they are taking video shots.
And
so,
I believe it indicates that it's got to be a PDF or a JPEG.
Okay.
I think. But I will check to make sure, but I think those are in the instructions.
And lastly, are we making considerable plans for if the variant goes, I don't want to say left, but if we have an increase in COVID cases and we have to create an atmosphere that is a little different than what we're planning for right now?
Well, for example, we're supplying PPE out to all the polling places and early voting sites again, as we did last year. Our staffing agency is going to have an extra pool in order for us to have workers. If there's an outbreak and any of the sites are affected, any early voting sites are affected, or staff, they will have an extra pool so that they can get us. And Happy Faces has partnered with a staffing firm that provides technical staff as well, so that they will be able to act quickly if we need them to do that.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're thinking about it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, there are a couple of items that I want to lean into that a lot of my colleagues have mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to go through the 4 buckets, which I like this framework. I think it really allows us to focus on kind of the key things that have been raised and we need to just keep working on. In terms of the absentee ballots, I really am going to echo Dr. Ruth's request for a flow chart of what happens after we receive that. I'd like for us to discuss that next month, and I really would like us to add in a layer in terms of what happened in 2020, particularly the items in the areas where the elections process received a lot of criticism and scrutiny, and say, this is where that applied, and this is what we why our process will address it or prevent it from happening going forward. So there are a number of instances we're all very aware of, but I think we need to, really just kind of dive into that a little more specifically. In terms of the supplemental staff, if we've learned anything from the process that happened over the last 45 days, it is that we've got to start weaning ourselves off to the extent that is operationally feasible, financially feasible, but also just what makes a business sense for us. I think we need to think through carefully what are the critical processes and functionality and accountability pieces that we need to own as our permanent staff versus having a staffing agency do. So I hope that when the RFP is approved for the consultant to come in, that is something that we will elevate because, as Mr. Johnson said, that's going to take time to design and to implement, but it's probably one of the things that we need to do first because we don't want to find ourselves in a situation again where the contract for supplemental staff, we've relied on it so heavily that if that doesn't go through, we are faced with a very real operation of not being able to run elections. So I just want to elevate that one as well. In terms of contingency planning, I think we also need to think about not just the COVID impact on staffing, but also what that might mean in terms of dynamics of how people are going to vote, right? I think we're going to see a large influx again of absentee ballot voting. We're also probably going to see a lot of early voting as well. People just not wanting to be election day in lines, in crowded spaces. So, what did we learn from 2020? Let's take that and make sure that we add in the appropriate capacity at those two, what I call safety valves in terms of avoiding the election day crush. And then finally, in terms of voter education, we are now within the 90-day window of elections. As Mr. Johnson mentioned, that next week is qualifying for a lot of the key municipal elections and races that we're going to be doing. Ms. Corbett, I know that the City of Atlanta has reached out to me in terms of do we have content available that they can start supplying their 311 staffing station so when people are calling in to ask questions that they're ready. You went through a great presentation last meeting. I hope that we are well on our way in terms of implementing, or even if it's not pretty and it's not all designed well, that at least the content is there for those users that don't necessarily have to have some sort of glossy flyer to be able to work off of. So, there are a lot of changes this year from SB 202, and I think, that could be another one of the criticisms is that we weren't as ambitious and aggressive is not really the right word, but just forward thinking in terms of letting the voters know this is different this year, because what happens in those tense situations, those last final days when they can't absentee vote anymore, it puts the crush back onto election day. So there's cause and effect and consequences of things that if we don't kind of try and prevent earlier, we'll be feeling the pressures and stresses on election day. So all that said, I do feel like, this is a great roadmap. I appreciate the time that you and the staff have gone into doing that. And like I said, it gives us a framework. So when we come back next month, there are a couple of things I think we'll need to kind of look into. The absentee ballot, the training and the staffing situation, it will be key. And then also the kind of the voter information, I think at that point it'd be great to have an update on that. So.
And
Yeah,
Chairman Wan, I think also really leaning into the staffing.
Yeah.
Because, again, Fulton County is as large as 6 states. I say that often.
Larger.
Larger than, it's larger, yeah. And so we need to act like it and ensure that we are fully staffed, and if it what have you, to ask for more staffing, we need to do that.
I'll say, the things that are uncompleted are encouraging because it shows that we're moving in the right direction. So I'm glad that this is out there, and hopefully it will help shape some of the narrative that's happening out in the public realm as well. Mr. Johnson.
2 things, and I apologize, I forgot one, but I agree. Anytime you need us to do anything, just let us know. We'll be more than happy. They call us anyway. So we might as well at least be on the same page when we're talking to them. But I also want to make note that the chair next to you is empty today, and it's not just because of COVID, but Ralph is not here. And we haven't had an opportunity to say, oh, it's on here. I'm sorry.
No, it's not on the agenda, so I was.
Okay, it's not on the agenda. I didn't think it was. I tried to glance before. But I do want to say something about Ralph. I know he's not here. I hope he's watching. If not, we'll shoot him a text or something. But just want to thank him for his years of service and the continued things that he's always done. I know he always put the people of Fulton County in front and tried to do all he can to help them, no matter the pressures around him, no matter the chatter around him. He always maintained a professional attitude, and we truly appreciate that. So I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the fact that the chair is empty. We wanted to get one more day with him, but we understand. So.
If I can say one thing, I got a chance to speak to Ralph yesterday for just a couple of minutes, and he's kind of finding his way through, not working. But I really, the institutional knowledge that is leaving with him, I think we're going to miss. And I've enjoyed working with Ralph for the past 4 or 5 years, and he's a very sweet man, and he always worked hard, and he kept long hours. And so thank you, Ralph, if you're out there.
Yeah, same here. He was just a tremendous asset to the department, and we will miss him. And he worked very hard and always had a smile on his face and did his work with joy. So congratulations, Ralph, for retiring.
Echo the accolades and appreciation as well. All right, any other comments on this part of it before we go into, I think you said that there was still the administration.
I had one more thing.
Yes, please.
I covered everything, but with the election budgets for the November election, the municipal runoff, or municipal general and the runoff are costing a total of $11.6 million. The county, the municipalities will pay about $4.2 million of that. The county is now covering more than $7 million of the municipal elections. Part of that this year there is a T-Splost and an E-Splost on there. However, the election costs increased last year because of the new voting system about 300%. The commissioners in 2019 passed legislation to charge the municipalities $2.96 per registered voter in the municipal general, $2.46 per registered voter for the runoff. And we were going to revisit that at some point after we determined how much the new voting system cost to run an election. I think at some point next year, we're probably going to have to go back and determine whether the $2.96 and $2.46 per registered voter cost is still an effective amount, because the county now is paying almost, it used to be that the county didn't pay any portion of the municipal elections, and now it's paying about 2/3 of the cost of the municipal elections. So that is something that the commissioners will need to look at some point, probably next year.
Will the consultant be able to work with us on that as well? Because I kind of look to them for two things. Number one is, operational efficiencies that we may not necessarily have seen or realized that could then really streamline our processes and then have a budgetary impact. So is that part of the scope?
Well, at least determining a good level of staffing by looking at what else is around the country and how we've traditionally staffed, and then we can ask them also to look at that and make some types of recommendations. It's just depending on which state you go to, they charge different. They charge the political jurisdictions differently. And in Georgia, it's much different than, say, in Texas, where every political jurisdiction has to pay, no matter what election it is, they have to pay a share of, you put something on the ballot, you have to pay.
Yeah, but I think we need to remember too, though, that the municipalities are ultimately our customers, right?
Yes.
And that we may be in the position where we're, to a certain degree, unless they run it themselves, the only game in town, but that's no reason that we shouldn't continue to refine what we do and streamline what we do. And so we have the opportunity with the consultant coming in to do a lot of this analysis for us. So I appreciate that you're saying that, that this is going to be something we need to look back at in 2022. Because I think, given some of the comments that have been floating out and response that we've been getting, we kind of, it's time for us to take a look at that. Given all the new dynamics that you've mentioned, we'll have had essentially 4 elections under our belt with the new system by that point that we will have good numbers and costs on. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're at least acknowledging it's on our to-do list. Was there anything else that you wanted to?
No, that's it for operations.
I did have one quick question regarding the no contact list. So I see, I'll be very curious for us to track that since the mailing just went out, according to this, on August 2nd. So I suspect over the next 30 days, between now and the next meeting, we'll start getting some potentially responses back, or at least some data in terms of, folks who say, no, actually, I'm still here, or, the other is silence, where we just assume that it was correct to have mailed them. So, yeah, I'm hoping that next month's report will have a little bit of numbers and reaction to how that's going.
Yes, and Shamira handled the mailing, so, and she could probably comment on what we're receiving back in the mail already.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
So far, we have received back approximately 2,000 of the confirmations, but they are non-responsive, so they are return mail. So as of right now, no one has responded by filling one out.
So I haven't seen the letter. Basically, if they dispute the letter, then they send the form in that back to us, so we know it was a response to that communication, right?
Yes, that is correct. So it's sent out on a confirmation style, a number 11, which we call it. And basically, if the voter fills it out and they provide a response, they will remain in active status, and, everything will be good. But if they do not respond within the 40-day clock, they'll be placed into cancel status. So we're just waiting for them to say either, hey, we're still here, or if we don't receive a response, then we'll have to move forward.
Okay. The one factor in this that we can't account for, though, is it's possible that someone, say I realize that I probably was on the no contact list, and I've seen all the publicity and comments out there about, hey, this is happening. Conceivably, I could go ahead and just go back and register, and then as soon as I get the letter, it'd be like, well, I've already re-registered as a voter. So that is one piece that would make the process in terms of what you receive back not 100% accurate, but I would say that's really, really limited, right? I think what you're going to see in terms of return bad address or returned confirmation, no, I still want to be on the voter rolls, is probably a pretty good gauge of how accurate that action was, right?
Yes, so we're expecting that we do receive some responses. In the past, just from experience in processing, only maybe half of them come back with responses, and a lot of people do, like you said, they'll just simply fill out an online application or DDS application, and they'll become current. But if not, usually majority of them are return mail.
Good. Okay. Thank you. I'm very
You're
curious to
welcome.
see how that all goes then.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? Did you have anything? Ms. Crawford, yes, please.
I just have one quick question, Rick. You said that we have a agency for IT people, a temporary agency for IT people.
Well, there's Happy Faces has a partner that they began partnering with last year to help them provide more of the technicians and the technical people with technical know-how.
Okay.
And so they reached out and partnered with them last year. So that's who they would go to again.
So are these people trained enough in the IT area to be able to help in between the machines coming back to the warehouse after early vote and getting them?
They have the technical
Right.
know-how to be able to learn that very quickly. A lot of, that company has done a lot of work with, for example, wiring the airport and some other things. They've done major projects around the Fulton County area. And so they have a lot of people at their disposal.
Okay, I was just curious because I spent some time down at the warehouse yesterday, and I was just wondering if there was enough time for the turnaround, enough people to do the job. So, thank you, I appreciate it.
But it's also your intent that the new IT manager and/or financial systems manager would also direct and oversee all that, correct?
Yeah, the IT manager position will have a number of duties, which it'll include things in our office as well as out at the warehouse, and that person will be directing a lot of those duties.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, Dr. Ruth, please.
Can you tell, where's the election central? Or can you share that?
No, I don't think
Okay.
I can
Okay.
yet.
That's fine. Okay.
What's that? An undisclosed location. Sounds very. Okay, Mr. Barron, were there any other managers who had anything they wanted to share with the board before we move on the agenda?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. That was a good update, and we look forward to just kind of tracking the progress next month. All right, colleagues, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Item number 5 under old business is bylaws discussion. There were 2 items, conflict of interest and party liaison. I know unfortunately, Mr. Wingate is not in attendance today, and his the piece on the conflict of interest was something that he had raised previously, and then Ms. Ringer at our last meeting provided some language around what we might consider in terms of adding to our bylaws. I took a look at what she prepared, and I appreciate and thank you for that. But then I kept thinking, what troubled me about it is that, to me, the county has a board of ethics, and the county has a code of ethics that we all are abiding by, and there are processes around that. When folks feel like, at any level, in any department, in any position in the county, that if there is a potential violation or concern, even as an individual, if there's something I'm doing that I want to make sure that wouldn't violate the code of ethics, that's the authority I go to. I don't know that I want our board to be in a position, to be that judge and jury, to be honest with you. A lot of what Ms. Ringer crafted covered a lot of, I believe, what Mr. Wingate was concerned about. But again, if you look at the code of ethics, it almost mirrors exactly the language that is in there. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that we need to insert this into our bylaws, which really just to me are more governance issues and how we operate, with the recognition and understanding that that specific piece is already covered by the county. So I will put that out there. I don't know if anybody else wants to make any comments. Obviously what it would take would be the motion or the action would be to amend our bylaws to insert the language that Ms. Ringer had provided. But I just personally don't feel it would be redundant because it's already covered somewhere else. Ms. Crawford.
I agree. In going through them and checking my Robert's Rules of Order, it is just reasserting the same thing that we already currently have in our bylaws. So I don't see any need in having to change our bylaws since we are governed by actually our bylaws and by the Code of Ethics.
Dr. Ruth.
Yeah, I think we should table it until Mr. Wingate is here. This was something that he initiated, and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, that's fine. I just, what it will take at this point is just a motion at some point if anybody wants to bring something up. But in the meantime, I feel like our default covers. I don't want the public to think that, oh, we were kind of ignoring this and then we just didn't think we needed to do anything because we were exempt from it. And no, actually, it's the exact opposite, that there are already procedures that, again, if someone has a concern, they can raise it to the Board of Ethics, and they have a very robust procedure around how to address that. Okay, the next piece of it was around party liaison, and I think there was some conversation around essentially establishing a new position. Where I started wrestling with this was that obviously we don't have the authority to create a position in the department. All we have is the ability to create a position on our board. And do we want to create a party liaison position within our board organization to accomplish the functionality that was brought up at our last meeting or the meeting before? I will personally say, I don't know that that is an area that I'm comfortable or feel like is necessary. Obviously, we have the parties that appoint the two positions each on our board, and I feel like that within those two people, if there's another way that operational and functionality-wise y'all want to handle that, I think that's really the more appropriate way. But that, again, is my opinion. I wanted to make sure it was on the agenda because it was brought up, and again, I wanted to make sure that we understand that we can't create a position in the department, and that the only real path would be for us to do it on our board, if that is what is the intent. So, Ms. Crawford, I see you want to make a comment.
Yes, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I really believe that that is our job to be the liaison. By adding someone else into the mix, we just add confusion, I think, in my opinion. So I am not leaning towards adding a liaison to the voter outreach. Any of us can talk to them and give them locations, help them out. They can reach out to us. We have that ability. So I just think it's another added step that we don't, another added person that we don't need in the chain.
Any other comments from my colleagues? Dr. Ruth, yes, please.
So just for clarification, the party liaison, my understanding would just work with the voter education and outreach, not being another hand on the board. Is that right, or?
Well, what I wanted to make sure that we weren't walking into was, yes, in terms of functionality, yes, but we weren't creating a new position somewhere, either in the department or on our board to do that. I think if the parties want to, kind of have a new line of communication, but it would not have any sort of direct report or responsibility to either the department or necessarily to us as a board.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
that is my understanding. Yeah, that this is to improve communication.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay, again, these two items were more just for clarity purposes, and I'm glad we are kind of in at least initial alignment on that one. Okay, that takes us to new business. The first item is the county audit review. Colleagues, I did not realize, and this is my apologies, I was kind of leaning back onto my city council experience where anytime there was a department audit, we would have the audit office come and present their findings, and then we would have an opportunity to have a conversation. I learned this week that that's not the practice here at the county, that the county auditor does not come typically to share their findings and results. So all that said, I did want us to have an opportunity to hear from the staff in terms of, we did get the management responses to the key 10, I think there was 10 findings, and then give us a chance to have a conversation about it as well. I think when these initiatives and efforts are taken, we have to receive it publicly and have an opportunity to talk about it and provide feedback. So that's kind of what this agenda item is. What I'll do now, Mr. Barron, is just kind of turn it over to you to give us a high-level summary of it, and then I'll open it up for comments, questions from my colleagues, and then I'll just remind folks that there were also some public comment questions about this as well today. So thank you, Mr. Barron.
Yes, and I think, the purpose of the audit is to go through any procedures that you have, and it's a learning experience because you need to know, make sure that you're operating in a way that not only incorporates best practices, but just makes sure that that, that there's no misappropriation of funds, or that there is no, that it doesn't affect election results or anything like that, as well as just making sure that you're doing everything in the proper steps and that you have processes in place. I think this had 9 findings in it. I think a lot of these, and Brenda was the main person that interacted with the county auditor's office, so I want to thank her for her work on that. And she, I think, found this document to be instructive. We responded to it. I think a few of the things to keep in mind is that last year our entire budget through before the COVID pandemic began, our budget was supposed to be $17 million. It ballooned to $44 million. That was a major increase in our funding, and we still had the same 2 staff members to that basically process everything. We ended up not only just having our election budget and our general fund budget, our operations budget within our department, but then we also received money from CARES. We had 3 grants. We got general fund money from the county. We had our election budget. There were an enormous amount of emergency procurements that happened. Working with the county manager's executive team, a lot of departments were brought in to help us try to manage a lot of these procurements, and also just to get us the supplies that we needed. So we had a lot of challenges. I don't think there were really, it's not, we disagreed with a lot of the findings. I think in some respects, I think what they don't show in the areas where, I wouldn't call them disagreements, but I just don't think they fully show the challenges that we had when we have other departments ordering things that were being directed in these meetings. And so sometimes a purchase or an invoice was created before we had even the chance to do a purchase order. So sometimes there were things that were done out of order. And I think there were some times where we would get the invoice, 30 days, more than 30 days past the original due date, which would be noted in there. And nothing, and you can ask Brenda, but none of the vendors were, I think most of them were pretty understanding last year, and it didn't affect any relationships in that regard. Some of the things that we've done, Brenda's already written standard operating procedures to correct some of the things that were already in, that were found in here. She's, the emergency procurements, those have gone away, so we won't have to worry about those anymore, but they've also, I think we know exactly, just from discussions post-election, how to respond to any of those in the future. And working closely with the purchasing department, we've hired we posted a financial systems manager position to come in and also help with processing everything, because our budget now is going to stay at a much higher level, and we need more staff to be able to process all these purchase requisitions, purchase orders, and all the invoices that come in. And so that will help us with the corrective action. The RFP that is out there that will be taken up by the commissioners at the recess agenda will also address some of these things, that they can look at our standard operating procedures and how we do that. As far as the responses, I think our responses, when you received this document, speak for themselves. And as I think the county auditor said that their findings, he said they speak for themselves. So if you have any specific questions, either Brenda or I can answer them.
And I should also add that the county auditor did avail himself to any board member who wanted to have any conversations with him or their team directly. So that option also is available to each one of us. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Johnson.
My question, excuse me, my question may be quick. Did we, and I'm sorry, I don't recall, but did we get one of these last year? Because what would be interesting to me, because one of the things you talked about is some of the challenges. I think COVID in itself was a challenge. But to be able to compare 2019 to 2020 to see if it's consistent or if it's something that was unique to 2020.
It would have been nice to have a baseline, but this is the first time since I've been here that the county auditor has audited us. It just happened to be in the year with COVID. So I think my feeling is, after going through this process, that most of these items would have either, may not have been in the report had it been in a prior year.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Crawford, please.
Do they plan on audit, what is the cycle of these audits? I mean, now that they've done one, are we on like a schedule to be audited every couple of years, every 3 years?
I think it's according to commissioner. A commissioner can request an audit, and I believe that's what happened.
Thank you.
So for finding 4, lack of supporting documentation, can you talk about how you plan to address this issue, especially with happy faces?
Okay, so now this item actually was outside of Happy Faces. We used different vendors last year. We had Happy Faces. We also had, we used Dominion. We used Corporate Temps and Halo Innovations. This specific one here had to do with Dominion and staffing, helping us staff when we lost 26 people during logic and accuracy testing in October. And a PO was issued for a certain amount of money, and the bill we got at the end was more than 4 times of what the PO was issued for. So we went back and we negotiated with the vendor to reduce that from about 1.9 million down to, Brenda can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was about $1.1 million. And I think what the issue was is that the vendor, when they were doing the work, they never indicated to us that they had exceeded the PO. And we lost our entire management team over there, and then, most of the support staff as well. So we were relying on them to do this work. If we were to go this route in the future, we have talked with purchasing and the county manager's team that there would be very strict guidelines put in place to prevent this from happening again. And one of those things would be for us to handle as we do like with Happy Faces, we would handle all of the systems to track how many people were actually on site, their hours, and we would track them rather than having the vendor do it. And that's what happened, is that they had their own people in place, they charged a certain amount per day, and then they kept track of those records.
Yeah, this is another reason to support moving away from supplemental staff. And
Yeah.
really.
And that was complete, yeah, and it was, and that one was 100% COVID related, the reason that we had to hire them. And I mean, it was an emergency procurement because we lost all of our staff essentially within days. And we had to bring people in to conduct L&A.
But we are hiring a financial manager,
Yes.
and that person will be brought on how soon?
Well, I hope to have all the vacant positions filled by mid-September.
Okay.
I think that's our target.
And will that be the only person designated for finances?
Well, actually, Brenda's the
procurement.
administrative manager, she handles that, and then Brianna, the administrative coordinator, also works on those items.
Okay, so you'll have three
Yeah,
folks, okay. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
good. Thank you for.
So it seems like, all except for finding number one, we have a pretty good, real short-term plan to address those in terms of things that, some of the process and procedures that we know we can already fix immediately, in terms of like invoicing and all that, but then also the financial systems manager coming on will help address this as well. So that's hopefully kind of a 45-day window. What seems kind of hanging out there is the standard operating procedures, which will take a little more time, but then that's also, we have a plan in place for that with the consultant coming on to really help us. I'm sure y'all are working on it, but help us refine and continue, getting that across the finish line. Is that
yeah, and
a fair
some
assessment?
of the SOPs that we have were not submitted. We have desk duties for example, in registration. But because of a lot of staffing changes and SB 202, we were updating those. So they really, we didn't want to turn them into the audit because they were either incomplete or they were not specific to those desk duties anymore. So we do have some of these in place,
Okay.
or they're just being edited at the time, and we didn't want to turn in incomplete SOPs. So we also had a couple other manuals that we used that we didn't submit. For example, ElectionNet has the state has a big, massive document on how to do everything in ElectionNet, as well as the Dominion's, all of their documentation that we use. Those weren't turned in, and those cover a lot of those daily duties. But what we're going to do is just codify all of that with this consultant so that each one of the desk duties are done as well.
All right, so I think, just from our kind of governance side, it sounds like, we received this audit, 9 out of the 10 are well underway. And then the 10th one isn't necessarily that it's delayed or anything. It's like they were already underway, but we're going to lean on the consultant to help us just tie all those up, and it should be done by the end of the year, 90-day window?
Well, I would say at least with the, a lot of the procedures, but the RFP that's set with the consultant, there are different, there were the phases in there. And because one of the vendor that we originally chose withdrew, and we had to go back and negotiate with the second vendor, it's delayed the RFP, so it's going to go into April.
Okay.
Before they're completed with everything.
All right, I'm just a firm believer that audits should not sit on a shelf, and that, we need to be tracking our progress and just checking off.
Well, and this is just we look at it as an opportunity to improve everything within the department by going through this and making the necessary changes we need to make.
I have to remind myself of that as I'm about to go into my performance evaluation at my day job. So feedback is good. Feedback is a gift. Yeah, was there something else? Okay, if there are no other comments on that, let's move, we're ready to move on to the next item, which is the communications update. Ms. Corbett, you've been waiting very patiently, so thank you.
All right, can you hear me now? I'm demask for a minute so I don't hyperventilate while I'm talking. Good morning, everyone, and thanks to all of you for your feedback. think all of you also know I'm Jessica Corbett, Director of External Affairs for Fulton County, and Regina Waller is with me, who is the Public Affairs Manager who works on election issues. Not seeing our other members of our team who handle things like graphic design and website updates. And last time we talked about some of the ideas for election communication. We do have a role that I would say is intrinsically linked with the voter education team. And really our job, and if you walk up to my office on the 3rd floor, there's a sign in my lobby that says that our job and our department is to empower people with information. That is what we do every day. And I think that that's very few times more important than in our work with elections. So we've kind of just prepared a quick presentation. Regina, do you want to go to the, just for the present version or whatever? There you go. That way it just looks, sorry about the animation though. I always forget to remove that stuff. So obviously this year, the two big issues we have are a couple of things. One is the changes brought about by SB 202, and the second is the kind of ongoing concerns brought about from last year's election. And when Fulton County was in a national spotlight, misinformation has kind of become a loaded term, because I think that people are beginning to associate that with a political perspective. But really what we're talking about is anything that's not true, a rumor, intentional misinformation, whatever that may be, that we have a role to correct that. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. So again, we kind of have three things. One is empowering voters, most important thing that we do, strengthening confidence in the process, and that is about just really peeling back the curtain and letting people see what we do, how we do it, we're complying with the law, and that we are here to really serve the public. And again, to address misinformation, and within that kind of implies intentional misinformation, but also to address anything that's factually inaccurate that's being said about the process. Next slide, please. And within that, I'm like just killing myself over this animation. There are really kind of three core ideas. One is clarity. We do have a plain language policy at Fulton County. One is integrity, that people need to have confidence that the process is fair, unbiased, and of course legally compliant. And third is equity. Fulton County is a very large and diverse county, and we want to make sure people are clear that resources are distributed equitably throughout our community. That's a very important principle as a government, and so we want to continue to act in accordance with those ideas. Next slide, please. So kind of the key audiences, this is part of any communication plan. The most important of those is at the top of the list, which is voters. You already heard Mr. Barron talk about poll workers and some of the things we're doing to kind of elevate the communication with poll workers. The political parties are important stakeholders in the election process. Mr. Barron talked earlier about community organizations and kind of alliance with those. Elected officials themselves, who I would say are kind of proxies for the governments they represent. In this particular election, the cities themselves are a big part of that. Journalists, there's a national media focus on Fulton County elections, good or bad. Also, I should mention that, Mr. Wan, you mentioned the city of Atlanta. We have an ongoing relationship with our communication partners with every municipality. During COVID, that has been strengthened because of the collaboration we've done. Also, our two school systems are part of that as well. We are Separate and apart from this, Fulton County is doing its own voter education work with the cities around the T-SPLOST, which is an item on the ballot. But again, that's more about the T-SPLOST itself. So there's a lot of interest overall among our municipalities in this election. Next slide, please. And then in terms of tactics, we are very fortunate. This meeting is being broadcast right now on Fulton Government Television. And that is a tremendous resource, not only for the broadcast, but on the production side. We also have a very robust offering of digital assets. The Fulton County website, which we maintain. Mr. Johnston, I want to point out that we corrected a broken link that was preventing the early voting information. Was updated, the link was not working correctly, but it is fixed now. We also have an email blast list that we put out weekly, social media assets, and last year, our department, in collaboration with IT, launched the Fulton Votes app, which we think is a great resource for voters. In addition, collaborating with the voter education team, we use influencer. A lot of people, when they hear the word influencer, they're thinking like the Kardashians or something like that. We're talking about community leaders. We're talking about people of influence in this community. So providing some toolkits with things like the early voting flyer that we already have, and we'll make sure all of you have it. We are getting all of the pieces baked and finalized for Monday's launch of the absentee ballot portal, which will go live at that time, and all of the other tools. There's a lot of change with this year's election, so we want to make sure people are very clear about what they can do and how they can do it. Media relations is a big part of what we do. That I think it kind of speaks for itself. And then one thing we found very useful last year was a direct mail piece, a colorful, informative direct mail piece that included all of the early voting sites. This year we'll also have all of the absentee ballot process baked in. The most important thing there, I think, is the earlier deadline for an absentee ballot application is now October 22nd instead of the 29th. And then limited advertisement. This is a small election. We won't be, doing radio PSAs or things like that, but just having some, promoted social posts or things like that to help get the word out. I'm going to ask Ms. Waller to go over kind of our 3 primary messages. I promise you'll never see this again with the animation.
Good morning, and thank you all for allowing me to be here this morning to chat with you. We do have our 3 primary messages. We're going to start out with the vote by mail. This is basically the absentee ballot voters need to understand the dates and the deadlines that are coming up, as well as the procedures that now take place under SB 202. So voters will applying for absentee ballots now need to know that they are required to provide their driver's license number or an alternative ID on their ballot application. This is very important that we make sure that we communicate this. As you know, August 16th, which is Monday, is the first date for a voter to apply for the absentee ballot for this November 2nd general election. Other dates, October 11th is the first day that absentee ballots will be mailed. October 22nd is the last day to apply for absentee ballots for the November 2nd general election. This is 11 days earlier than the deadline in past elections. The absentee ballot may be turned in to our drop box locations, which we have 8 early voting locations now, during early voting hours only. Fulton County elections offices will have office hours during the weekend, following the last day of the early voting to assist voters with additional hours to return those ballots in person. And with all of this, we have a tactic plan of vote by mail. We have the media relations piece of it, which is what I work with. Media relations, a press release that will be issued prior to the absentee ballot, emphasizing these new timelines and procedures that is prepared, going through the review process, and it will be issued by tomorrow. The regular updates will be provided to the media about the absentee ballot process as well. It will not just be one news release. We will constantly update the media and have them to assist us in getting these communications out. Also, we're working with FGTV. FGTV will help us to highlight any changes that we do have with these early voting procedures, including all of the key dates and timelines, and also constantly pushing the information about the ID requirements and our Dropbox procedures and changes. So we'll have stories that will air at least 2 weeks prior to the first date to request the absentee ballot. So we are working with FGTV to do that. Our collateral, as Jessica mentioned, we have a direct mail piece that will be distributed in September, which will also include all of the updates about the vote by mail process, as well as emphasizing, again, these key dates and deadlines, and again, the need for the ID and any new procedures with the drop boxes. Additional pieces will highlight vote by mail, what you need to know, because we want to make sure that not only the media, but the voters have clear, concise communication regarding this process. Our community outreach, we are working with the voter education teams in the registrations and election to make sure that the information about the votes and the mail processes are being distributed. Our digital teams are working to change the early voting procedures, put in the key dates and timelines, as well as the ID requirements and the Dropbox information. We will also have alerts that will be issued the first day to request an absentee ballot and the last day to request an absentee ballot. And again, the community influence outreach, we will have a toolkit that will include the collateral that addresses all absentee ballot procedure changes, including a sample social media post for distribution for elected officials, municipal governments, community organizations, and other internal and external stakeholders. Our vote early, that we will continue to discuss. Our voting early. Voting early, we want to make sure that that message that it is easy, convenient, and the preferred option for most Fulton voters. The voting early is the easiest and most convenient option for all of those who are registered to vote in Fulton County. And Fulton County, again, as we know, has the largest early voting program in this state with 24 locations. Fulton County voters can cast their ballots 7 days a week from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. And voters can go to any early voting location, and they can receive information about early voting locations on our website that you can see here on the screen, or by downloading the Fulton Vote app. And again, with all of this information, we do have a plan in place to assist us in getting this information out and making sure that our voters, as well as the media, as well as the board and other constituents and internal and external stakeholders understand. Again, we will be working with FGTV to highlight the dates of all of our early voting locations. We have that direct mail piece that will be distributed again in September with the information, along with flyers and social media graphics to provide the listing of the early voting location and hours. I will produce a press release that will be distributed on 1 month prior to the early voting to emphasize availability. Also, we will hold press briefings to update the media on everything that is coming regarding any changes to the locations or any updates to the locations. Again, the community outreach, the voter education teams, we are working directly with that team in elections. And our digital team is hard at work to include the voting hours and locations, including web, social media, email, and the app. And once again, the community influencer election, the toolkit will provide all of this information. So that is another way that we're getting this information out. So vote on election day. Under changes to SB 202, the out-of-precinct provisional ballots will not count if issued before 5 p.m. This is critical more than ever that our voters understand the know before you go. And voters who choose to vote on election day must report to their assigned polling place. We're also going to communicate or continue communicating that election day polling places, locations have changed for thousands of Fulton County voters, and voters must check with their election day polling place before going to the polls. And remember that the polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And of course, out-of-precinct voters cannot vote by provisional ballots before 5 p.m. So to assist us with getting this information out, we do have a plan for Election Day voting. No, you're fine. We want to make sure, just while we're getting our slide up, the very first thing that we're going to do, we're going to continue to push that direct mail. The direct mail piece will be distributed again, as we've mentioned, in September, because we want our voters to understand that the know before you go will assist in making the process to vote on Election Day painless, and that they have everything that they need. Again, media relations, we will continue with our media briefings in September that will emphasize this know before you go message and in the consequences of out-of-precinct voting. And we will also provide precinct changes press release if needed. And then of course, produce signage with a QR code at every polling location for voters to check their polling site. And of course, the community outreach, again, we will continue with our relationship and team building efforts with the voting education teams in elections so that we can make sure that we provide this information to our voters. And our digital team will include the know before you go message alerts. And they will be issued the last day of early voting as well as on Election Day. And then finally, the toolkit will include the know before you go information, which includes that sample social media post and for distribution to election officials, municipal governments, and community organizations.
Thank you so much, Regina. And so really quickly, we'll go over just the last kind of additional or supplemental messages that are part of this plan. First, we talk about the people and the people working in the polls who we have worked with Mr. Harris on making sure the information is updated online about how to serve as a poll worker, and have been working, as I mentioned, and I won't go through all of this, but we're working with him and monitoring where they are with recruitment. These are some supplemental ideas for poll worker recruitment, and of course, poll worker training is beginning in the next week or two. Next, please. So these are some of the things, again, we're working with him on monitoring where they are with their poll worker recruitment and making sure that we're not over-recruiting, but that we're supporting the team with what they need. Next, please. In addition to that, we mentioned earlier kind of rebranding the poll worker training as Poll Worker University, and that is including both development of collateral as well as video training. I'll just give a shout out to our graphic designer, Jessica Bauer, who had a great idea that as a former Disney intern, she talked about her experience there and how great is it if a poll worker comes in and has that kind of world-class training experience that we know Disney is famous for. So I think that's what everyone is aspiring to, that they have the best, they are the tip of the spear and that they have the best possible experience. Next slide, please, Regina. So again, signage, collateral, just kind of helping people know this part. And I think some of this is one piece that we have talked about, and I think Dr. Ruth, you called this out, that the poll worker training, there is kind of I think some interest in that in the public. And so helping provide, again, another peek behind the curtain can help demystify that experience. This was a specific area that we had some requests about at the last meeting, which is the election process observation. And we talked a lot about that in our kind of collaborative meeting this week. There are several areas in the law where the public is explicitly provided an opportunity to observe the election process. So there are really kind of two categories. There are poll monitors who are authorized by the state. They have special training and they have a very defined role. And then what we might call observers are really the public. And the law doesn't really distinguish between the public and the media in most places. So they're kind of all grouped in there together. So making sure two things. One, that it's very clear what the public's rights are to observe these processes. And secondly, what their responsibilities are when they're there. So there are certain prohibitions about using your camera and using a phone and things like that, so that we would have very clear signage to help the public know their rights, and also to help our team enforce whatever those responsibilities are, because that has come up during some of these experiences. We are working with the team on building out the calendar. What are the dates, times, locations, all of these things will be happening, so that those rights and responsibilities can be very clearly communicated. Next slide, please. Again, I won't go into all the details. Misinformation. Fulton County is not unique in this. This is a national issue. It's not only elections. One of my other big projects is our vaccine outreach, and we're seeing tremendous misinformation in that space. Fulton County, again, this is happening all over the country and all around the globe. So we just want to make sure that there is a source of truth for information, that if we hear a rumor, if we hear something that's not true, that we provide clear and unbiased counterpoints to help the public understand what's real, because it is confusing out there. Next slide, please. So this would really just be primarily a web page, and we would promote that web page through some of our other assets. All right, and then the last one is election worker safety. There was actually an article I read last night in the Washington Post that didn't mention Fulton County, but talks about the issue of harassment all over the country of election workers. This is a real problem. And I will just say, I take this very seriously. In my 22 years of service at Fulton County, I've attended the funerals of people who've lost their lives in the line of duty, judges, court reporters, librarians, people who were murdered as part of their jobs. And I certainly don't want that to happen here. So we are very committed to safety. And one of the things we've observed is receiving threats through our own social media accounts. So when we see those, we take that very seriously. And I want to be very transparent about our intention to report each and every one of those threats. Like I said, it's a little emotional because we have seen those comments already, and we just want to make it clear that people come first and people's safety comes first throughout the process. So it's pretty much that. Next slide, please. And then we talked about what used to be called mobile voting buses, and they are now called voter education buses. So we've been working with the team on those updated graphics, and we'll be working with the voter education team to make sure those are available and out in the public. Next slide, please. We do expect to have a fair number of impressions. This may be adjustable we took another look at our budget for this, and the largest kind of resource asset will be the direct mail piece, which goes into the mailbox of every household. So that is the biggest expense. But we will be monitoring this. We expect to see very high number of impressions, both through earned media as well as paid media. And we can take any questions.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I know you have a question, but I think one of the big changes we need to share with the community is around drop boxes and absentee ballots that
Yes.
The last day is Friday.
Yes.
That the 4 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday are no longer available to folks. People will be surprised to hear that.
I think that's a great call out. We have talked to the department about what, because it is my understanding, and Mr. Barron, please help me clarify this, that at the last resort, a person, if they're not comfortable with putting that ballot in the mail, that if they're past that Friday of early voting, that their options are to either go to their polling place and surrender their ballot and vote in person on election day, or that my understanding is that the law provides for them to turn it in at an election office. Mr. Barron, can you clarify that?
Yeah, they can relinquish it to vote in person.
Okay,
at-
on
at a
election
poll.
day.
Yes.
So that would be that alternate at that time, but certainly want to promote them turning it in, mailing it back in. A lot of people right now have distrust of the postal service, unfortunately. We've all probably experienced some of that. And so highlighting those Dropbox locations and the hours, we are very fortunate that we have 7-day-a-week early voting, so that gives people a lot of opportunity to use those 8 drop boxes. But it is a big change from last year, absolutely.
I mean, again, like the way y'all approach it was good, highlighting what is different now, the shortened times, the different times, but I think that one's a big one, especially, let's say there's a spike in COVID right before the election, people are going to be looking for ways not to have to go to a ballot,
Yes.
a voting location on day of. And I would hate for someone to be driving around on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, thinking, oh, I can just take this to
Right.
a Dropbox, and they're not there.
That's a great
So,
point.
All right, sorry, Ms. Crawford.
When do you think your toolkit will be?
We are
Complete.
putting a lot of finishing touches on right now. So certainly, I expect that we will have everything complete by the end of this month at the latest. I hope to have most of it done before then. But because there have been so many changes, we are, asking for a really robust review on all the
Yeah.
collateral. And we're doing this all with our in-house resources. So that is a little extra bump in that. That's why I wouldn't commit to earlier. But there are pieces that have already been released, like the early voting flyer has been finalized, this absentee ballot piece. There was a little bit of a question mark about whether the Secretary of State's portal would be available or not. We're very clear that that is not available now for municipal elections. And so that put a little bit of a delay in our planning there, but we're good to go. And so what I would like to do is go ahead and provide you all with the pieces we do have, and then once we have that final toolkit, to also make sure you have that. And again, we expect to have that by the end of the month.
Thank you, I would appreciate that. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Yeah, and along those lines, Reese McCraney at the city
Okay,
is
yes.
pinging me, so hopefully y'all have a direct line of
I
communication.
have
for each
Reese's
other.
information, and we'll definitely reach out.
Thank you. Dr. Ruth?
Yes, thank you so much for a
Thank you.
great presentation, Regina and Jessica. As it relates to the recruitment of poll workers, so high school students, teachers, is that that's one tier? You're not just recruiting in those areas for poll
No,
workers?
that
it's
was,
just-
when we met with Mr. Harris and the team, that was when kind of special call out, I think, because there had been some interest and we have in the past done some collaboration, again, with Ms. McLeod and her team, as well as Mr. Harris and his team with Georgia State students. And I think that they, while they've had some really great experiences, they've also had some experiences where college students have not necessarily wanted to show up at 5 a.m. and have a full day's work, and they're busy, we get it. But there are people who are 16 and over can serve as a poll worker, and it is a great opportunity. Schools, for this election, school will be in session, during presidential elections, typically that is a school holiday. That is not a school holiday for the November election. So that will be, I guess that's more of an aspirational win for this particular election, but that's something we've talked about overall. So I'm glad you clarified that.
Okay, great, that's good. And then, so you will try to recruit like retired voters who are
Yes.
retired, who have time on their hand to do this?
Yes.
And I wondered, you talked about safety, and that's so important, and I'm glad that you had that slide. And just in thinking about the pandemic, if we wanted to have something about voting safely during the pandemic,
That's a great.
some recommendations around bringing a mask or that a mask would be provided for you.
Sure.
Using a stylist, those kinds of things might be helpful. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is, what were the number of impressions or downloads of the app from last year? Do you happen to know that?
My recollection, and I don't have that in front of me, but my recollection is we had close to, I think, close to 10,000 downloads. We launched it in September, right before early voting started last November. It was frankly a really rapid turnaround project. And we had the idea after the June election, and it launched in advance of November. So we were, but it had close to 10,000 downloads last year, and we certainly will be working to increase that. We've actually provided Ms. Williams with some banners that we can have, pull-up banners that we can have in the early voting sites that promote the app and the download of that. One feature of the app that we did not use very much last year, but we want to use this year because of all the changes, is we can push out an alert that does have some push notification capability. So that's one of the things that we will also be taking advantage of. Mr. Wan, I also want to mention at the last meeting, I'm sorry, Dr. Vuti may have had another question, but we talked about text messaging, and we do not have an existing platform. I know the city has Notify ATL. We do not have that as an existing platform, but we have we've requested some pricing and are still looking into that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Other questions? One final comment, Mr. Barron, in terms of using our mobile units for voter education, I think you and I had talked about also the voter ID cards, being able to issue those for those that don't have driver's licenses that would need them to request an absentee ballot. I think let's add that functionality on there as well if we can. All right. Other questions or comments on the presentation on communications?
Thank you for my email.
Okay, thanks. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett.
We look forward to it.
Okay, we're reaching the home stretch of our meeting here. Our next item is item 8, call for election, T-Splost. I'm not sure who is walking us through this section, but as they're doing that, SPLOST, for those is special purpose option, local option sales tax, acronym.
Yes, we have to call this election, so I guess I need to read this. Is that right, Cheryl? Just read this. The call for the special election notice is hereby given that in accordance with OCGA 21-540, a special election shall be held in Fulton County for the purpose of submitting to the voters the following question for approval or rejection. Shall an additional 0.75% sales tax be collected in that part of Fulton County, Georgia, outside of the city of Atlanta for 5 years for the purpose of transportation improvements and congestion reduction. The special election will be held on November 2nd, 2021. All persons who are not registered to vote or who desire to register to vote in the special election may register to vote through the close of business on October 4th, 2021. Advanced voting will be held October 12th through October 29th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Election Day, with the exception of City of Atlanta precincts, which will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Election Day. This, the 13th day of September 2021. Oh, that's the publishing date.
Ms. Ringer, do we need to take action on that, or was just a simple reading of that sufficient for this purpose? Okay, so I guess we just need to approve this. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion to approve. A motion from Mr. Johnson, and second by Dr. Ruth. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Barron and Ms. Ringer. Next item is approval of the intergovernmental agreement, or IGAs, to conduct general municipal election on November 2nd and general municipal runoff election on November 30th, 2021. Mr. Barron.
These are all, you should have all of the intergovernmental agreements between Fulton County and the cities of Alpharetta, Atlanta, Chattahoochee Hills, College Park, East Point, Fairburn, Hapeville, Johns Creek, Milton, Roswell, Sandy Springs, South Fulton, and Union City.
The T-SPOS as well,
And the what?
the T-SPOS.
Oh, and the T-SPLOS. So for those, we need to approve the IGAs for all of those municipalities to conduct their elections
Okay.
for
colleagues,
November
if you'd like
2nd
to
and
see
November
one of-
30th.
If you would like to see one of them, I have them here to my right. It's a nice little stack of paper. Any comments or questions on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the IGAs. A motion by Ms. Crawford, is there a second? Second by Mr. Johnson. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We-
Any abstentions?
Go.
That motion carries unanimously. The last item on our agenda is the approval of polling place changes.
IGA for the E-SPLOS.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. We are requesting approval of 3 precinct changes. Notice of the pending changes were advertised in legal organ prior to this meeting per election code requirements. If approved, all voters impacted will be notified of the change in location no later than 30 days prior to the next scheduled election. All proposed facilities are handicap accessible. Proposal 2021, precinct RW03 at Vickery Mills Elementary. To decrease the number of voters assigned to this facility, a split will be created, which is RW03A. It will be created and relocated to St. Andrew's Catholic Church, and RW03 will remain at Vickery Mill Elementary School, and RW03A will be relocated to St. Andrew's Catholic Church. Proposal 2321, precinct 10P, located at Collier Park Recreation Center. Due to voter safety concerns, we're proposing to relocate this poll to Harper Archer Elementary School. Then Harper Archer Elementary School will house precinct 10D1 and 10P. Proposal 2421, precinct 06D2, located at Haygood Memorial United Methodist. The church is no longer able to accommodate. We're requesting to relocate this precinct to Morningside Presbyterian Church. Morningside Presbyterian Church will house 06D1 and 06D2. And that concludes our 3 change requests for today.
Any questions for the staff on the recommended proposals? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the polling place changes as listed. Is there a motion? Motion to approve. Motion from Mr. Johnson.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Crawford. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Barron, is there any more business to come before the board?
Yes.
Oh.
Apparently.
Apparently.
I'm sorry, Board. I was trying to coordinate with Mr. Barron and Ms. Williams because there is an item that we expect to be coming up, but we're still in the negotiation process of the contract for the IGA for the E-SPLOS. There's an educational local option sales tax as well, special purpose local option sales tax that is expected to be on the ballot as well. There has been some new case law coming out with respect to whether or not the school should actually have to pay for putting the issue on the ballot, and so that's what's holding up the negotiations on the contract. But to give ourselves leeway, I'm going to ask that the board amend their agenda and approve staff to move forward with preparations for the E-SPLOS election.
Okay, so it sounds like we have 2 actions we have to take. The first one is to amend the agenda to add a conversation around the E-SPLOS, the Educational Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. And then once we approve that, we'll pick it up, and the motion would be to authorize staff to proceed with negotiations. Will the ultimate contracts come back to us at the next meeting, same as the IGAs for today?
Correct. So we believe your next meeting is going to be the second Thursday in September, which will be before, we believe, the publication deadline. And so we'll verify all of that in the meantime, but yes, it will come back before you.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to amend the agenda to add this item. Motion by Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Ruth. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Our agenda has been amended. Now the item is before us, and the motion I need is to authorize staff to negotiate contracts with regard to the East Bluffs, with the contracts coming to us for approval at our September meeting. All right, motion by Mr. Johnson,
Second.
second by Dr. Ruth. With that, the motion is before us. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. So you have what you need for that, right? Excellent. Any other business to come before us? All right, colleagues, we do need to go into executive session to talk about litigation and potential litigation. I will entertain a motion to do that, and noting that it is 12:02. Motion by
I make a motion to
Ms.
adjourn.
Crawford, second by
adjourn.
Johnson. Motion is before us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. We'll now go into executive session. Thank you. It should be brief. All right, we have finished our executive session, and with that, I need a motion to return to regular session. Moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Crawford. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
pretty
Any
loud.
abstentions? With that, we are
Motion to
reconvened.
adjourn.
All right, and there's a motion from Mr. Johnson to adjourn.
Seconded.
Seconded by Ms. Crawford. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all next month.
Okay.